Great, so welcome. I remember Chris telling me he doesn't know whether the drone is controlling him or he is controlling the drone. So we're gonna start off with two demos. Our first demo is Film Collectively from Perihan Abu Zaid, and our second demo will be Movie Galaxies by Jermaine Kaminsky.
Hey, hello, everybody. My name is Perihan Abu Zaid, and I'm here to talk to you about Film Collectively, which I was inspired to work on or start when I met people like Hani, young Americans that watch movies on Netflix and YouTube and usually look for content that's relevant to their international background or cultures they have a certain affinity with, but can't find them anywhere online. And at the same time, I met people like Hatem, and basically international filmmakers that have won several awards, but still continue to struggle to fund their projects and reach an audience. I looked at the market and I found that pre-internet, we were limited with the physical world. So films were limited with space. There's only so many theaters that can produce or basically show films. And at the same time, reach, you're only limited to people that are within a certain proximity of that theater, which perhaps why it made sense that only 20% of the entire films produced, maximum of 20%, reached an audience or made it in theaters. But now, post the internet, basically we have unlimited space and unlimited reach, which is why the 80-20 rule doesn't apply anymore. There's 99% of all the content or all the films that are online are actually consumed. Yet, the problem still continues to exist, basically. Filmmakers still struggle to fund their projects and reach an audience. And the audience in the US, or users in the US, still struggle to find the variety or the diversity they're looking for. That's because the current offerings are either limited in quantity, or limited in geography, or limited in variety. And that's why we started Film Collectively, which is essentially a mashup of Netflix and Kickstarter for international independent films. So we're bringing filmmakers from around the world to basically bring their films here to be streamed and watched by the US audience that's interested in this international narrative, and at the same time be willing to fund new projects that meet their needs or their interests. We make money from different things on the platform, crowdfunding, the crowdfunding part, the streaming, and then even making use of our data. We're launching in a couple of months, and we're starting with the Arab diaspora community, which is one of the largest in terms of growth of content here, or Arabic content here, and at the same time, we're able to, because of my background and my professional background and even cultural background as an Egyptian, we're able to bring celebrities on board that actually attract the talents and the users. We're two co-founders. We're both second-year MBA students. My background is in marketing, business development, and media production, and Enrique's background is in investment banking and management consulting. We also have 3 advisors. 2 of them are celebrity filmmakers and producers. One of them is also an actor from Egypt. And they've both won several awards internationally. And we also have a professor here at MIT who spent the past 5 years doing research or crowdfunding, advising us on that side of the platform. This is it for me. If you have any questions or if you're interested in what we're doing, please come to talk to me after. I don't have to go anywhere. I will just be sitting over there. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jermaine. I'm a current researcher here at MIT's Media Lab and a co-founder of a startup called Movie Galaxies.
Okay, I'm so excited.
Or rather, a research app because it originated from research. And I want to tell you about the hidden beauty of movies. Because as you watch movies, and in this case, this is Good Will Hunting, which more plays like at this place here, you have sound effects, you have the actors, the screencast itself. But what you mainly have in movies is a social network. And what you can do with that is that you can draw the interactions. And at Movie Galaxies, what we do is we take movie scripts, we analyze them, and based on that, we calculate the social network within the movie, meaning as a result of the interaction of characters. And it's quite interesting because every movie, like here in the example of Good Will Hunting, has its own structure interaction structure of the characters, and by that also its own fingerprint. And what we can also do is we can also put in some social network metrics, like the density, which tells you a lot about how the characters are connected to each other. You have a density of 1 if everyone is connected to each other, and you have a density of 0 if no one is talking to each other. And you have some other measures. I shouldn't go too deep into site because of the time, but basically you can explore the single character of a movie and how it relates to the other people. But what's really interesting is to making comparisons, how a movie like Babel looks totally different than Pulp Fiction or The Big Lebowski with the dude in the center. Or you can see The Lord of the Rings, you see how Gandalf is connecting those two worlds. And what is really interesting about it, that the directors, the people who wrote the script, and the studios who produced the movies are not really aware of that. So we're hitting pretty new grounds there, and that was really surprising to us. Because, as I said, it was just fun that originated for a paper conference. For a conference, we came up with a paper because we had no other idea, and we actually applied with that one. So it was a snowball running downhill since then. And what's also interesting is that you can have a look at how the network evolves within time in the movie. And actually, if you like to, you can go on moviegalaxies.com and have a look at about 740 movies for now. But we are adding a lot of more, especially new movies and series at the end of the year. So you're always invited to come back. And one other thing I would like to show you, and this is one other thing that obviously the industry wasn't that aware about, is that every director also has its own fingerprint in the way how he selects scripts or how he aligns the network. What is particularly interesting for Tarantino and Lynch is that they, to the mid of the movie, as you see to the left with the density, introduce a lot of new characters, obviously. While, for example, Stone and Spielberg, to the end of the movie, raise the density, that means a lot of characters die. And so the density goes higher. So this is what I want to tell you about basically the hidden beauty of movies that you probably don't see, and I hope you think about it when you're watching the next time a movie. There's one other element, that's the last one, how movies reflect society. As we get more and more connected, our networks get bigger and bigger, and with that, in some cases, less dense and dense. So we have a lot of interactions, but not really, we have a lot of weak ties, but not that much strong ties. And the same counts for movies, as we see throughout the last 40, 50 years, how the density slowly goes down. Thank you.
Great. So welcome to the TV, Film, Digital panel surrounding the world in film, TV, digital. The theme of this panel is to explore how new technologies of crowd distributing, crowdsourcing, immersive film and entertainment technologies are closing the divide between the stories that we see on screen and everyday life. So with that, I'll have Rainey Aronson, director, executive producer of PBS Frontline, come and introduce the panelists.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's just come. Yeah, if you guys just come, we'll use all our time up on stage. I'm going to move my chair here so we can see each other. So I am the deputy executive producer of Frontline, which is a documentary series that airs on PBS, if some of you don't know. But I think significantly for you guys to know about me today is that I'm also a fellow at the MIT Open Doc Lab. And there's a reason for that. I believe that shows like Frontline, series like Frontline have to get with the program when it comes to especially interactive work, also virtual reality work. So I decided in order to really authentically help us go in the right direction, I had to go back to school, which has been very interesting to actually be with people back in school. It's terrific. So I want our panel actually to introduce themselves. And what I asked them to do, which I think would be a really great exercise for all of us, is to describe what they do as if you guys don't really know what this is. So they're at a dinner party. What do you say that you actually do? Because I think this space is new, and I think we're coming up with terminology, and I would just love to know what you'd say to someone who wasn't well-versed in this. So why don't we start with you, Pedro? Oh, actually, should I start on this side? Okay, great. The media is going to rule us. We'll start with you, Kevin.
Sure. My name is Kevin. I'm CTO at a company called VHX. We're an open internet distribution platform for anyone selling video content. So we offer tools like purchasing and a beautiful streaming experience, analytics, and we really let the creator be in control of that whole experience. And lastly, similar to the music streaming panel earlier, really owning that relationship with their fans, having them be part of the process, the ongoing future releases. Yeah.
So, and you also work with Vimeo, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if you want to know like why this area is important to me or the background. I was one of the early employees at Vimeo, so I've always had a strong passion for consumer video and putting the creator first and just online video in general. So I think that paired with enabling creators to earn a living doing this on the internet, something most people could get behind.
And I should say a lot of our commissioning, now we look at Vimeo and places like that for new filmmakers.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's the first time we can, as commissioners, actually see new people doing new things. It's amazing. So it's not like you're sending in your DVD or tape. It's like you're giving access to younger people especially.
Right.
And someone like me is looking for new talent. It's awesome. So
yeah,
congratulations for doing that early on.
I could talk more about the types of content on VHX, but it's like, yeah, we see some of the larger hits and blockbusters that we know that will do well, and it's great to see that, but we're also seeing like new filmmakers emerge and otherwise would have trouble getting distribution or getting their content out there, so.
Great. Adam, we had such a great discussion before about like, what do you do?
Perfect segue. I'm the example of the new filmmaker that everybody talks to, or talent, as
talent's good.
people refer to. Yeah, my name's Adam Weber. I'm a director, producer, editor, writer, whatever, of film. And together with Jimmy, we made a film that's, here's a still from it. It's called Tomorrow We Disappear. It's about the Kathputli colony, which is a colony in India full of magicians, acrobats, puppeteers, fire breathers, stilt walkers, singers, dancers, thousands of families that's in this pocket of Delhi that's the film's about. It's being bulldozed to build the first ever skyscraper. So we were there covering them for about 3 years. And
so I mean, that's sort of what our film is about. I mean, for me, I'm Jimmy, and Adam and I kind of came from different backgrounds. Adam came up through a more sort of traditional Hollywood route, working as an editor. He actually worked on Tarantino films, and he worked with Michelle Gondry on a Noam Chomsky documentary, actually, that screened here last year, is The Man Who's Tall Happy. It was cool. And I actually came from a more like transmedia background. I did like AR, like alternate reality games. I produced the sort of transmedia story extension of the movie 2012 with someone from MIT, actually, who worked under Henry Jenkins. And I think for me, just coming from the digital side of things, I loved the way that technology was pushing, but I really felt a sort of desire to get back to more sort of formal film structure. And so that's how we decided to make this movie together, is I just wanted to sort of immerse myself in the principles of traditional storytelling and bring those insights back towards the interactive realm. And so here we are.
Right, we were talking over lunch that the real synergies we believe as storytellers and filmmakers is between this entire community with storytellers, that what we're going to see is going to be really remarkable. Lara, you're amazing. I love your work. You want to tell us a bit about what you do?
Thank you. You're amazing too. I want to thank Philip for being here because it's my first Hacking Arts and I'm very excited about it, although I missed most of yesterday, but I'm sorry. And I'm glad to talk just after you because somehow I'm here for almost the opposite reason than why you made that film. Sorry, oops, stop moving. And basically, I live in Egypt. I'm a Lebanese Egyptian from a Lebanese community in Egypt, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I work a lot with videos, photos, and all kinds of materials, sometimes even bricks. I made my own bricks and built towers and silly things. But this project that I'm here to talk about was one of the projects that I did during the Egyptian Revolution, which I don't consider as a project in itself. In a way, it was more an action, and it was just something very spontaneous that happened really overnight. And you can see an image here on the screen. It's something called Tahrir Cinema. So it was a very improvised moment where we created a cinema in the square during one of the sit-ins in the first year of the revolution in July 2011. And a lot of things happened. So I hope we can discuss what happened in that time while in this panel.
Great, Lara, thanks. So Pedro, actually in full disclosure, Secret Location and Frontline have done most of our interactive work together, and you're the VP of Creative, right?
That's right, yep.
And why don't you tell a little bit about what you do, and then I have a specific question. I'm going to start with you. We're going to dive right in.
Okay, sure.
This is too easy.
So my name is Pietro. Despite my small-town Canadian accent, I've never played hockey, and I can't skate, so if we can stay away from that topic altogether. I'm really embarrassed about that. I'm a creative director and partner at Secret Location. We specialize in combining emerging technology with brand and entertainment to create new forms of digital storytelling. So that could look like an interactive film, a video game installation, an application, whatever it may be, VR now. That's what we do. And I'm just really honored to be here because I love art and tech so much. And when you combine those two things to get something new is just what I live for. So thanks for having me here.
Great. So, Pedro, I just wanted to note, so one of the ways that I sort of came to this is through my children and watching my really young children be able to, on the first generation iPads, use them so amazingly, and then be really angry at the TV set when they couldn't touch and really engage with it. So that was about 4 years ago, and I walked into Frontline and said, we're dead. The linear film, oh my God, we have to get with the program. My son's here today. It's very appropriate. He's 8, and he just keeps saying, why aren't your films more like Minecraft? And there's a reason he says that, right? Because he wants to be able to feel it, touch it, engage with it, and be with it, right? As opposed to a linear film. Obviously, I know how to make linear films. So I want to know what brought you into this. And what do you think you bring to someone like us, the people who are making films? How can you help transform what we do?
Sure. So I guess it's sort of along the lines of what I just said, and what inspires me is why I'm here and in this industry, and that is art and technology. It's a dance between those two worlds right now, and it's honestly the most exciting time to be alive, I think, as a technologist or as an artist or as a producer of media in general. So that's how I got here. I always quote him, so I should know who it was, but I think it's John Lasseter at Pixar said that technology inspires art and art challenges technology. And I think the spirit of the hackathon is exactly that. Like you're mashing two things that shouldn't belong together and getting something new. And yeah, it's fantastic to work with people like Rainey and to challenge old conventions and reinvent them for the next generation.
It's a difficult conversation, though, I will say. I think there's still a gap between us sometimes. And one thing that, I wanted to talk to Adam and Jim about is, well, you have very different backgrounds. Can you tell me one of your most difficult communication moments? Like, oh my God, you're thinking about it this way, you're thinking about it that way. Was there anything like that? So I can understand, oh, they're just perfect.
We're like an old married Jewish couple, so.
That's good. That's not a bad thing.
We bicker about everything, but there's a lot of love there. So I don't know whether it's specifically about our disciplines that we argue. I don't know. What do you think?
Maybe Adam can speak as a filmmaker.
Yeah. Well, I hate Jimmy, so I can talk pretty liberally about this. No, I think most of the films I work on are very big and grand and belong on a big screen in front of a lot of people. And when there's something scary, you want people to react to it, and you want to hear it in the audience and everything like that. And then we started off on a very extremely independent film. And I can define that later, but it means no help from anybody. And,
no help.
And we basically but we wanted to make a big cinematic experience. And that comes with a lot of challenges. It comes with budgetary challenges, and that also comes with technology challenges. And that comes also with, now when we're in figuring out distribution, which is happening right now, the difference between a small screen and a big screen means a lot to us. In traditional film, if I can represent traditional filmmakers at all, it would be that we love to worship film in a giant temple where it's black and there's hundreds of people.
You can't escape.
And right, and I'm addicted to it. And I think sometimes I love the small screen and I love interactive and I love all the things, but I do need to retune my brain a little bit. I'm young enough that like I can do it, and I also play video games and everything. But it's a challenge in terms of the way you craft something, is how you think about it, and the small screen is way different.
Yeah.
I hope some of you in the crowd can ask about that if you're curious, because I think what you just said is so interesting. Like the dichotomy between the two is really, and they're obviously converging, but it's still there is still a difference when you go to a theater and watch something. Although if you believe in VR, maybe very soon we'll all be able to experience it together in VR, which will be awesome. Right. So do you have something else, Jimmy?
I was going to just say one of the major sort of differences between our backgrounds, I guess, is that the tech industry is sort of imbued with a sense of transparency and sort of building upon each other, and the film industry sort of obscures itself, so people don't have a lot of insight into what you're doing. And so for me, like, I wanted to, our film started with a very successful Kickstarter campaign, and I think part of that was, we're essentially introducing to the audience from the outset that you're going to come on this journey. And I think that filmmaking a lot of times is like, you go into the bunker, it's going to be amazing, but it's terrible right now, so let me hide from you until it's good, which will take forever. And I think for us, we were sort of working that dynamic out between us, which is like, how do we offer a level of transparency so that people on the internet and supporters and sort of commissioning editors and whomever can feel like they're a part of this journey and believe in it, but also give ourselves enough space that we can actually fight against what is essentially a really terrible product and get it to where our taste is, which is good.
That's awesome. That's great. I didn't think about that. That's really interesting.
I didn't think about it either, yeah.
I think about it in journalism terms. It's so hard to like put journalism out before it's done, right? So Frontline has this problem all the time. You have to like really vet things before they're out there, and that restricts us sometimes. In an interactive sense, we want to just like publish, but you have to hold back sometimes. So, Lara, I'm so curious. So you're there, you're in Tahrir Square. Why did you do it that way? Like, it's so unusual and so cool, but why?
Just to explain a little bit more what Tahrir Cinema was. Basically, the second biggest sit-in started in July in 2011, and it was very clear it was going to last at least until the next Ramadan, which was a month later. So we had a month ahead of us before the army would descend on us and remove us. And I walked around the square, and it was a very difficult moment because in the revolution at that point, it was very clear that people were starting to be divided as to whether or not the role of the army was something that was supportive of the revolution or not, and so on. And so there was a lot of anxiety, and there was a lot of anger also floating around. Plus, of course, this sort of, very new and very fresh kind of freedom of speech that was flooding since a couple of months. And people were just expressing themselves and screaming in microphones and yelling most of the time. Egyptians love noise, so it was very loud, and there was speakers everywhere and resonating, and it was quite amazing. And I was just watching and looking and saying, where are the images? And why don't we have something visual? And I'm a visual artist. I really communicate better with images. So it took me a couple of hours until I started to tweet a message and say, does anyone want to help me do a screen and set up?
You said it took you a couple of hours?
It took me a couple of hours to sort of just send a message out and say, does anyone want to help me put cinema in the square, a screen, projector? And suddenly I got responses from different people, some who knew my work, some who didn't. And the next morning we were talking, and I had already found the projector and other people trying to do also a stage somewhere else in the square. And then it took us basically 24 hours to set it up. It was incredibly rudimentary. Very funny, actually, because I just ran to the gallery, the art gallery next to the Tahrir and the townhouse, which I've been working with for many years. And I went to see all the kids that work on setting up the shows and asked them, do you have anything I could use to just make a screen? And so they give me a big printed sort of, these plastic banners you use for advertising. that had a photo of Tahrir Square full of people from the 18 days printed on it and rolled up in the back of the gallery. So I take this picture, and then I'm like, okay, let's build it. Let's do something. So we got pieces of wood, and as things happen in Cairo, we just nails and hammer and just made this, very basic screen. I mean, if you look at it, it's quite pathetic.
How can people look at it? I'm just going to intersect for one moment. I'm sure some people haven't seen it. Raise your hand if you've seen Lara's work.
Maybe you can put some images of what the cinema looked like. And there's also a little film that I did.
Really
so if this can roll, maybe it will give also a sense of the atmosphere. So we set up the screen, this very rudimentary screen. You can tell, it's really basic. And so on the back of the screen is a picture of the square. And that first night, which is not the photograph you see here, but the first night was immediately a success. And we had, maybe 70 people who sat with us and looked at the footage that we showed. So there was no planning, there was no programming, there was no intention other than the necessity to convey to people what the media were not doing and were not conveying. And so all the battles that took place in the 18 days and since had not been seen by any of the people, most of the people who were in the square. And a lot of people had, of course, it had been very much discussed how this had been a Facebook revolution. And of course, it wasn't a Facebook revolution. It was a lot of different revolutions together. And a lot of the people in Egypt, in fact, don't have Facebook or access to the internet. And so it was really extraordinary because immediately you got a sense of the need for these people to actually understand what had been going on.
That's
and
amazing.
So it was an ongoing process for months.
So, she's also a fellow in the Open Doc Lab, so we're going to hopefully get to what she's doing now in a moment. So, Kevin, I wanted to know what your background is. What's your education? What did you do?
I went to RIT and studied computer science, so just technical programming. I think I was lucky to end up at Vimeo because that's where the founder of Vimeo, he went to RIT as well. And I happened to be working down the street at an agency, so I kind of lucked out. And then just my passion for video and.
So where does that come from, and where is it going?
What's that?
Your passion for video. I said it's people like this that are going to help us transform. I'm sure of it. I'm always looking for people who have computer science backgrounds who are actually, Jimmy and I and Adam were talking about that. You guys are our, helpful future. So
right.
Why do you care about this?
I think collectively the whole team at VHX has a background in videos. Some either in the traditional distribution space or others just hackers or developers that have worked in video related projects. One of our co-founders did Star Wars Uncut, which is this crowdfunded or crowdsourced project of cutting up Star Wars into 15-second clips. People submit their version of that, and then it's stitched together to a single movie. So I think just that's in the DNA of our company. The company formed very quickly. It went from 2 people to 12 people in within a week. It just kind of all came together, and we're just passionate about this mission of empowering creators.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, Pedro. I wanted to know because I know what side of this you're on as well and your expertise. But where do you think there's a lack of? I know we are definitely doing more hacks. I think that's a great sign. I think when you get together for a couple of days, that's something. I'm always a little frustrated by a short-term hack because to make a frontline film takes us 8 or 9 months to do one single film. So I find those 2 or 3 days things just for me creatively and intellectually hard. Where are you seeing a lack of kind of the synergistic work that we all need to start to do together? And what would you recommend?
In terms of what industry?
How do we start to work together? Where are you seeing it working well? And then what's the best way to have filmmakers and technologists start to put their heads together?
Well, hackathons can be frustrating because of the lack of time, but even our relationship was sort of born out of a hackathon.
It was, truly, yeah.
We had one at Frontline where a filmmaker, a documentarian, and a bunch of developers and designers got together and built basically proof of concept prototypes over what was it, 1 day, I think.
It's only 1 day, yeah.
So talk about a lack
we
of time.
were beginning.
But our project ended up becoming something with Frontline. We had a proof of concept there, and then it became a real world piece. So I think, I don't know if I can speak in terms of where the industry is lacking, other than people need to collaborate. You need to just meet people from outside of your discipline, and it's becoming that technology is the glue that binds us together now as you know, a performing arts person or a writer or a graphic designer. New tech, I believe, is what binds us together in this day and age. So I think, yeah, I don't know where there's a lack.
New tech is what's binding. It is true. It's like that's what's binding on all together. So the question is, how do you meet in those spaces to make something together and force yourselves to? And one of the greatest things about the Open Doc Lab is it's really like people meeting together to say, like, also what is important, right? Where should we take our attention? Where should we pour our, you know, passions? Adam, I wanted to know, just looking at this space, and I'm curious, like, are you curious about things like VR? I know you're a traditional, you know, DP. You know how to edit. Are you passionate about VR? Are you feeling like you love linear? And how are you feeling about that, just visually and creatively? This is a big question.
I feel a lot of things. You know what it's like? I'm gonna just use an analogy that just came to me. But it's like, you know, as if like you're, you know, the kid in the candy store. Feels like that, except like if you eat too much candy, you're gonna make yourself sick, kind of thing. So for me, it's like I want it all. I want everything. I just love creating experiences, and film for me was just my way of doing that. I just grew up where that was really impactful in my life, so that's the kind of the path I took. But the Oculus Rift, all of this stuff is so awesome. But for me, it like makes me hesitate, because I'm like, oh, what do we lose when we don't, as I said before, worship in a big theater? Like, what do we lose? That was so much a part of the way I experience things, and I feel like storytellers need to work together with technologists. And
so you think, you know, as a younger filmmaker and someone who's looking at the future, are you worried about your skill set? Are you thinking like, I got to learn how to be a VR DP, or that's what they just called it on the last panel?
Right. Yeah. I think I have enough. I love collaborating, so I don't get worried that like I'm going to be phased out. I think it's more just like what I love in traditional cinema will get phased out, and so I don't want to be the only one fighting for it. So right. I think it'll always exist. I think theaters will always exist, at least I hope. But you know, I plan on evolving and adapting, and I welcome all new technologies. I'm just hesitant.
And Jim, I know that you said that you were sort of desperate to get back to sort of more just learning maybe the discipline of more traditional filmmaking, but yeah. I actually want to understand like where you're going. So you're doing this now, right? You guys are trying to get distribution, but what's your next big, you know, what's your inspiration next?
Well, I also just want to speak to it too, because I think what Adam is saying is really important. I think it's also inherent in our film as well, because we're dealing with a colony of it's the largest colony of street artists in the world that's going to get displaced and potentially destroyed. So these type of questions of losing art forms and evolving is like very inherent in our thinking. And I think for us, it's really about always making sure that you're looking to, like, to be crass about it, there's no new shit under the sun. Like, telling a story.
That's so true.
Telling a story is telling a story. And so, like, as technologies evolve, they have to be more human. And being human is just what it is. So, like, everything, as long as it's, like, playing with your emotions, will be fine. If it's about displacing your emotions and being about novelty, then it's a problem. And so for me, like, the type of stuff that we're interested in, you know, we're like right now we're actually partnering with an agency to begin producing a lot of film content for museums and cultural institutions. And the reason for that is because, one, we're really interested in, you know, high cinema and contextualized spaces. And unfortunately, when you make a film, I have no idea where you're going to watch it. But if you watch it at a museum, I know, and we can build around that. And two, it's like, I don't know, I want to create stuff that feels humanistic at its core. And how, I like doing branded films. I like doing, you know, branded documentary and all that stuff. We work with commercial agents, but for us, we also want to like play in that space because we think that they deserve high cinema as well.
That's great. Okay, Lara. So you did this amazing thing, and you're at MIT. What are you doing here? What about you?
Well, I just want to add a little note about what you just said. Yeah. I think what you're saying is that basically ideas come, and you need to find the best way to manifest them. And to be open to how to manifest them doesn't mean that you have to be at the height of technology or that you have to do what others are doing because there's a movement, but more to choose what is the right way to communicate and to make people experience the subjects that you're dealing with and the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. So, it doesn't mean you're going to do only linear films. I'm sure you're going to be inspired to do other things at a later stage and in different ways. And I try to do this in my work by staying open to actually have fun with it in my work, because I come from being self-taught in my artwork and developing all kinds of ways of working, and also living in a country which is third world. So since 20 years where I come from, but I didn't live there all my life. But the last 20 years have been sort of living in Cairo and developing myself as an artist. So I've really worked on the ground and really, in the dust, in the cement, in the mess and the chaos of Cairo, in very organic places, in poverty, in lots of scenarios that I can describe. I played with iron and bricks and, all kinds of things, filmmaking, whatever. And so when I watched the revolution, when I took part in it, when I did this Tahrir cinema, which was a way of not just communicating what people were not having access to, but was also a way of distributing footage that they could then go and distribute to their villages or their cafes or their neighborhoods. And in exchange, we started receiving footage and collecting archives from what they had experienced since the beginning of the revolution. So slowly I created, I had already started, but it was a way of continuing to build an archive on the revolution and collect, very random material that was of very, of different qualities. And then I had this collection. I did a lot of works with it. And at one point, I thought, OK, now we are at a point in the revolution or in this evolution of the political situation, to not call it a revolution yet. We are at a point where everything about Tahrir and about what happened is being neglected, is being put aside, is being deleted, is being erased from the graffitis on the walls directly to the censorship on the internet and to the activists who are in jail and to all the events that have followed the elections of the last year sort of revolution. And so I've come here to work on possibilities of archiving history and work with an archive about history. And so suddenly the Tahrir became a symptomatic event of this part of our time, which is more representative of a larger number of events that have been taking place for the last few years. And the question for me was suddenly, well, how do we give a tribute to what happened? How do we keep a trace of it? How do we protect it from being, erased from our memory? And how do we archive history in the digital age?
That's a big question, right?
So yes, it's a big question.
Good luck. Let us know. She's just joined the fellowship program 2 weeks ago, right? So you're 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, 1 month. Okay, you're 1 month in. Kevin, what excites you the most when you look at the next few years? What's on your horizon?
Sure. I think if you look at distribution in a singular form, that's one piece of it. I think there's a lot of potential with the relationships between publishers and the ones consuming that content. We see it with Kickstarter. People are funding these projects. They're being brought into the distribution process and the filmmaking process. They're brought up, a lot of films on VHX have released their second movie or episodes weekly, so they're kind of throughout the producing of this content, really part of that process. I think another big aspect is the sharing and like social aspects. So, you know, one way to look at it is VHX is enabling self-distribution, but we also want to redefine it in some sense. And that could be filmmakers being connected with other filmmakers to promote or sell other people's work, enabling more unique ways of sharing, which is more than just like tweeting a link or sharing a link, but having consumers in a productive way for helping other consumers find content, but also to benefit the filmmaker and growing their audience. And
so just to understand this better, because I did
Sure.
look at it quickly, I was really curious about it. Do you actually have subscribers? Like, how do you guys make money? Like, what's your plan?
VHX takes a small cut of every purchase, and that covers like some bandwidth costs and storage and that sort of thing. And then we just take 10% of every transaction, and then 90% goes to the filmmaker, which is
That's
which is great.
amazing. That's amazing. That's better than most by far. That's
Yeah.
cool. Okay. Great. I want to open it up to the audience, and then I have a couple of last questions, but I'd love to just hear from you guys and ask away. So somebody has a microphone. I see a guy in the back.
Hey, this is sort of a question for Adam and Pietro. I have a filmmaking background. I'm also moving into making interactive things, and something that really challenges me is I love the theater experience. I love the experience of seeing a work that with a group of people. Is there a way to reconcile interactivity into that, or nonlinearity into that, a collective experience that is also nonlinear or interactive?
If I could go first.
Yeah, please.
This is sort of a fresh idea that I've been talking about with friends lately, but I think that it's cyclical, where the printing press was invented, for instance. Spoken dialogue, storytelling kind of died for a second because everyone was in the corner reading a book. And this is very McLuhan of me to say, and that's not just because I'm Canadian, but and then TV and radio and television come out, and then it's this global village campfire storytelling, gather around the radio and listen. So it becomes communal again. With the invention of mobile, everyone goes back to looking at their phone, and it becomes an interactivity. It becomes an individual piece again, right? So it's cyclical, and now this is my version of the film. This content specifically for me because Netflix chose it for me. So I think we just need to think about what's next. VR is definitely a personal experience, and that's just a good question for all of us in this room to start thinking about. How does the communal experience come back into the existing technologies, or is it a whole new type of technology that comes out as the next wave of consuming content?
I mean, remember we had the Oculus Rift COO was saying that he really sees a slow future of VR being with multiple, sitting together. You're actually virtually experiencing something together. I mean, he said it was going to take a while, though, but.
It'll happen before
we know it.
Before we know it.
Before we know it, next year.
There's some kid hacking that right now in a basement. And
it's a really good idea, right? I know my son would totally die for that with his friends, right? They already virtually play Minecraft, so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize that there's a cyclical pattern, and I think there's always going to be some sort of communal experience. I think for me, it's I value really as a filmmaker, as an artist, I really value story and emotion. And I think when you're in a theater and there's a shared experience, it intensifies emotion. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, it's like a shortcut. So I guess I'm putting out a challenge to all the technologists, which is like, keep that same sort of emotional experience and trigger. And I'm perfectly happy. I welcome, Oculus Rift seems awesome to me, and Secret Location is really badass. But it's the same kind of thing.
Just say yes in America.
Oh,
yeah, I'm awesome. I'm badass.
They're amazing. But if I'm home alone on my couch watching a comedy, I tend to not laugh as much, if ever, out loud. But if all of a sudden 5, 6, 100 friends are around me, we'll all be laughing, and then I'll laugh because somebody else's laugh is weird, and then I'll laugh even harder, and then I start choking. It's And that's what I love. And for me, it's like that's part of it. But I think there are other ways to do it, and technology will facilitate that. I think the phenomenon is always possible.
That's cool. Okay, other questions? You have to have questions. I see a woman in the back.
Thank you for a
And
very
tell me who
interesting
you
panel.
are. Sorry.
I'm Leila Kinney, and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Initiatives at MIT and of CAST, which has helped sponsor this event. So I have a question that follows on this previous one, which is about perhaps thinking about spatialization of reception, because I was thinking about how there's this really strange feeling that there's the movie theater experience, but then in Tahrir Square, this is this great outdoor interactive space in a quite different way. And I was listening to Jim talk about starting to do some work for museums. And that's a very different kind of experience in space. And I even think we're primed in museums to experience things differently. And one of the issues with video art is that nobody goes and stands in a room, usually for 30 minutes. So what I'd like to hear you all talk about is just how the environment, the context, the spatialization, and this could apply to this morning's discussion of VR as well, inflects not only your work and your approach, but how you think viewers might respond.
Lara, why don't you start?
Shall I
And then
describe
because
a
you're
little
all
bit?
answering, we only have 10 minutes left, so let's
I'll just explain a little bit the situation with Tahrir Cinema is that the space was, as I said, it was very spontaneous, but it attracted a lot of people in the square and every night. And it became a kind of, quiet community within a very agitated space. And also, the square was a free space, which is what basically is missing in Egypt. We don't have free spaces, so we cannot be in the street easily. And so this somehow became also a sort of leisure place and a revolution space and so on. And so people sat and watched footage from different people coming in and interacting and presenting their version of what had happened or a moment that had happened during the last 7 months. And they also explained why they had filmed this, where they were. So there was also, it was a cinema, but it was also a sort of round table and a debate, and all kinds of things happened. So people were laughing, people were crying, people were arguing, fighting, but fighting verbally, not necessarily jumping on each other. But they were really, that was a real engagement of the audience. And the screen was a way of channeling the kind of inability to express questions or to really figure out where we were. And so it was really extraordinary, and it was actually an incredibly human experience. And sometimes the cinema became something called Tweet Nadwa, which happened for the first few months of the revolution, which was that the tweet community, the Twitter community sort of realized that they all existed and sort of got together in a physical way regularly during the few months that followed the 18 days. And so when we had the sit-in, we actually held one of these meetings in Tahrir itself and had the screen as a kind of Twitter feed and discussion on different issues about law and reforming all kinds of, the police and so on. So this was the sort of relationship that the cinema gave.
It's amazing. So Jimmy and Adam, do you guys want to try to answer that? It's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways think about like what we have right here, which is that you're seated, you're kind of dark, we're illuminated on a stage. If this were like a fascist state, it would just be my head on like a giant screen screaming at you. What we're doing is we're creating a sense of hierarchy. And I think that cinema in a theater creates that sense of awe, where you're like in the dark room looking up, and something in our minds feels, like we're supposed to be taking something from this. When the screen is in your hand, it's sort of in all of you. Like you're in control of it. It's candy. You can do whatever you want with it. And I think like for us, like it's a lot about thinking about the space in which you're in and what is the experience of the person who's about to consume the experience that you've created for them. And with museums, like I think it's actually a real challenge. Like, I'm excited about that challenge, but by no means am I like, just because we're control freaks and can like design the experience, do I think that that's going to be the solution. We also have to combat the idea of what you think a museum experience should be. And a lot of that is using the technologies to our advantage, creating that sense of novelty to hook you and make you feel like you trust us, and then deliver a story that we think is beautiful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the reason Jimmy and I are working together, have worked together, and continue working together, because I'm excited by the museum space, and I think it's all about managing expectations. So you're right, when you go into a museum and you go to watch a film, the expectation is like, oh, you're gonna get 10 seconds of my attention, and then I'm gonna move on, unless you dazzle me, and then I'll give you another 10 seconds. But if I know that as a filmmaker, like, I can create an experience that is fueled off those 10 seconds. And then all of a sudden, I can shoot your attention purposely, because I know I have 10 seconds, over to the next screen. And then I'm ahead of you. And now I'm like guiding you through this museum, and things are happening, and it's like you're swimming in an ocean or whatever, because I understand that. And I think my wanting to worship in a huge theater is just because I love those expectations. I love knowing that I'm going to be in awe of something. I think that's an amazing spiritual experience.
Well, let us know when you have your first installation.
Yeah.
We're dying to see it. We have time for one more question. Yes, in the front. Yes, sorry. Kevin, why don't you try to answer that?
Sure. I don't know if I can speak too much of like the quality of work per se, but I think 50% of the sales on VHX is international. So kind of also to answer the last question, I think like internet distribution can enable like many experiences, either in different locations or international. Like we've done, like Roger Ebert's film, Life Itself, was premiered at Sundance. And as they hit play in the theater, we did it online and for everyone. So I like the idea that, not being able to control these experiences, but infinite possibilities of, other in-person experiences or other individual experiences on devices, and then also enabling international access where otherwise people wouldn't be able to see these kinds of work.
Great. One last question? Arjun. It's like a frontline app that's interactive. You know what? I'm working with that guy Pedro to fix that problem. He's the answer to my problem. It's a great idea. In fact, we're doing it. Thank you.
I think we just found our beta tester.
Yeah, no, he can be our beta tester. I love it.
You're a pro.
Great. Are we up with you guys? Thank you so much. These guys will all be around if you want to chat with them.